Fiji is a paradise in the South Pacific. Unfortunately, the country has been infiltrated by a doomsday cult, Grace Road. They rule their members with an iron fist, while entangling international authorities in a years-long game of cat and mouse. Unhindered, the cult built a vast business empire stretching across the island, warmly embraced by the local government. Their ambitions seem to be far from over.
반드시 정계에 들어갈 거야. 지배하고 다스리고 누리고 정복할 거야.
They expanded from 30-something businesses to 54 in the period following the raids.
Do we look like a cult?
There have been allegations of being fed improperly, being housed improperly, being overworked, well beyond what normal labor practices would allow, and physical punishments to top everything off.
I realized my passport was gone. I was panicking a lot. I was screaming for help.
This story is about religious fanaticism.
Actually, their whole purpose is about preparing for great tribulation or the Armageddon, the end of days.
About a regime deeply entwined with them.
The church were able to ingratiate themselves with senior people in the government of the day.
About freedom of press.
Our latest investigation story or piece is with our lawyers.
That the permits given to your production company must be cancelled forthwith.
We're basically holding back the stories.
And about an entire country in the chokehold of a sect.
What happens if you effectively kill this golden goose?
How did Grace Road amass so much power? How far does its influence reach? And why has no one stepped in to stop them? Well, we went there ourselves to find out.
All right, it's the first day here.
This investigation is, of course, a job for Valley. He previously traveled to Ethiopia for us, where a new ocean is forming. It doesn't take long to convince him to go.
So I was super happy when Fern asked me to go to the other side of the world to join a cult, I guess.
Now he's on a 48-hour trip from Vienna to Fiji.
This is the farthest away I've ever been from home. Literally the exact opposite side of the world.
Valley will spend nearly a week in Fiji, speaking with all kinds of people about Grace Road, or at least trying to.
Grace Road? Nothing much about them.
I've heard lots of rumors, but it was like out of my business.
All I know is that they say they are a Christian-based restaurant, but from what I've heard from rumors, they said they're working under cults or something like that.
I have had conversations with them. It's a confidential meeting, so I can't say more. From what I have heard, it is enough for me to know that this is not a church.
There are nagging questions that only Grace Road can answer. And to get an answer of them right now, as you now know, not very easy.
They haven't talked to us. They don't even know what we're doing. And yet they're trying to shut us down. If that's not a red flag, I don't know what is.
But let's go back to the beginning, before Valley's plane touched the ground at Nandi. It all starts here in Seoul, South Korea, between auto repair shops in an old factory building, on a Sunday morning in 2008. The woman in the blazer up front is called Shin Ok-cho. She spent 3 years evangelizing China, preached in Philadelphia and in South Korea. She claims she was trained by the Presbyterian Church, back then one of the largest Christian denominations in South Korea. But the Presbyterian Church insists Shin's story is false. Not that it matters much. By now Shin has her own church, Grace Road. And she has some pretty specific ideas about humanity's future. Jesus, she says, will soon return to Earth a second time. But first, the world must endure a doomsday. In South Korea, cults have been flourishing for decades. In the early 2000s, an estimated 300,000 South Koreans were said to belong to 100 different groups. Today, more than 300 cults are active in the country. Some experts trace this back to the national trauma of colonialism and war. Back then, cults offered social contacts, comfort, and salvation. Today, they promise secret knowledge, a path to material and spiritual prosperity. Many of these cults are controversial. Some are outright dangerous. Over time, Shin wins over hundreds of followers with her rhetoric. In her mind, there is only one way to escape the coming doom. They must find the promised land, where she and her followers can survive global famine and nuclear fallout.
Their plan was to establish these large farms and to assist in helping feed the world during a time of hardship. That was the message that Ok-cho Shin was promulgating from her pulpit.
Dan McGarry is an editor for the Pacific region with the OCCRP, the Organized Crime and Corruption Reporting Project. He's been investigating Grace Road for years. Around 2014, Shin's son Daniel Kim takes up the quest to find said promised land. He searches for a place with no winter and a steady warmth between 20 and 30 degrees Celsius. In his pursuit, he allegedly traveled to 60 countries, and eventually his search leads him to Fiji. An archipelago of 332 islands and over 500 islets. Scattered across an ocean expanse almost twice the size of the Gulf of Mexico, only 100 are inhabited. Fewer than 1 million people live here, most of them on the main island, Viti That's also where the capital Suva is located. Until 1970, Fiji was part of the British Empire, so English became the official language, and because India was also under British rule, many Indians ended up in Fiji. Today, next to English, people here also speak Fijian Hindi and traditional Fijian Aituke.
Like you said, at the end of the day, only thing you hear is stories, but it's important for us to see it and believe it. We can't be depending on the stories we hear.
Back in 2014, Kim wrapped up his assessment of whether Fiji could be the promised land. Now he's about to leave for his next destination, Nepal, but he gets stuck in Fiji and takes it as a sign from God. His quest, he believes, reached its conclusion. Soon after, Grace Road announces they have clear evidence. This is the land God has prepared. And so Prophet Kim's mother and hundreds of church members follow him there. Others believe no prolonged search mission or higher power was involved.
There used to be a direct flight from Seoul to Nandi. That's it, it was a direct flight.
Reverend Bhagwan James is the General Secretary of the Pacific Conference of Churches, an organization to bring together different churches in the Pacific region. He is also a minister of Fiji's Methodist Church.
I can tell you that I have been aware of the Grace Road group for about 11 years now. I was first approached by Korean groups in Fiji, faith groups in Fiji that are doing missionary work to raise their concerns about some of the new sects that were coming in.
It wasn't just Fijians who were wary of Grace Road. Back home in South Korea, the Presbyterian Church launched an investigation into Shin Okjo and gathered evidence of just how dangerous she was. To heal a schizophrenic man, she ordered her followers to tie him with duct tape. The man's blood circulation failed, and his leg later had to be amputated. In September 2014, the Presbyterian Church declared Shin a heretic. Deacon Lee Ng-yu was one of the ones leading the charge against her, a grave insult, one that would not go unanswered. A Sunday morning, 3 months later, Mass is about to begin at the Daerim Methodist Church in Seoul. In front of the church, a few dozen Grace Road members are protesting. Suddenly, some of them storm inside. They violently attacked a church official, Deacon Lee Ng-yu. They grab him and drag him down the stairs. They probably consider him to be a demon. At least, that's what Shin reportedly told them. She was never persecuted for the attack, but afterwards, she was on the radar of both the South Korean media and police. All the more reason to finally settle in Fiji for good.
This is the place that is supposed to save a group of people from famine and nuclear fallout. A group of people that came from 8,000 kilometers away from here, from South Korea. I wonder also, all the people here in this bus and the people around, how aware are they of this sect and the stories around them? How troubled is this paradise? This paradise on earth, really? It's like a 3-4 hour drive from Nadi to Suva. And all along this road are actually also Grace Road businesses, supermarkets, gas stations, restaurants, and so on.
One should ask the question is, why did they come in as a business first rather than as a church? Right? So they had obviously already a methodology, an approach to come in. So they'll come in as a business, they set up as a foreign investor, and then they move from there.
In April 2014, Grace Road established their presence in Fiji with this farm, 3.8 hectares of land, more than enough space to grow rice and vegetables. So far, so good. Given the whole incoming global famine thing, it probably makes sense to cultivate their own rice, feed the world during a time of hardship, and so on. But then, something strange started to happen. The cult started to expand, rapidly. In 2015, they opened their restaurant, Grace Road Kitchen, followed by Noodle Story, Sunny Pizza, Awesome Grill, Fierce Chicken, Snowy House, and Patisserie Pacifica. Grace Road also launched their own construction company, designing and building for their own businesses, for private clients, and even for the government. As befits true Christians, after Cyclone Winston in 2016, They helped rebuild this village. A year later, they were busy refurbishing and extending Prime Minister Videmar Ma's house at a cost to Fijian taxpayers of allegedly around $3 million. In the same year, the group won a business award, presented by Videmar Ma. By this point, more than 100 Fijian locals are working for Grace Road, but the majority of employees are Korean, at least 300, and they're far from done. Grace Road opens supermarkets, hardware stores, a dental clinic, shoe stores, and beauty salons. At the center of it all are Daniel Kim and his mother, Shinokjo, shaking hands, cutting ribbons, growing the empire. And for a long time, no one knew what's really going on behind the scenes at Grace Road. We're trying to uncover what's really happening here. During his long flight to Fiji, Vali put his time to good use, improving his problem-solving and logical thinking skills, with the help of our sponsor, Brilliant. Brilliant is a hands-on learning platform that offers thousands of visual, interactive lessons from math and AI to programming. Here, for example, you have to make the green duck disappear with a function. You learn by doing, which is up to 6 times more effective than traditional lectures. We also really enjoy training our logical thinking this way. Don't be fooled by the cute animations. The puzzles get more and more challenging over time. All courses were crafted by teachers, researchers, and experts from renowned institutions. Brilliant is available as an app as well as on your PC or laptop. Scan this QR code or go to brilliant.org/fern and start learning new skills with Brilliant. With our link, you'll get 20% off their annual subscription, giving you access to everything the platform has to offer.
We are actually driving to Nabu right now, which is the place where it all started. The headquarters of Grace Roads, Grace Farms. This is the road, the Grace Road.
During his travels, Vali is supported by Lonnie, a filmmaker from Fiji. Behind the scenes, Jim and Lada handle logistics and access, and Mary does the driving. Even before Vali arrived, they tried to get us in touch with Grace Road, sending emails and calling dozens of numbers.
So it was either not working, diverted, or it had that fax line sound with this high beeping sound when you call the number. 2 of them actually managed to get through. Spoke to a lovely gentleman on one of the numbers that I called, and he said, email the admin address. So I did. I'm still waiting for a response from them. I've tried that number again. Nobody's answered.
By now, it seems Lonnie's number got blocked.
As we're approaching Grace Road headquarters now, what's our plan?
So I'm just gonna go up to the front door and speak to them and explain to them what we're trying to do in person, and if we can really schedule the time to sit down with them to have a chat on camera.
Yeah.
Lonnie and Jim enter the building. After a while, they return.
Come on, why are you walking so slow? We want to know. What did they tell you?
We went up to the office.
They were nervous when we mentioned the fact that we were part of a documentary crew and we want to speak to somebody. You could sort of feel the shift in the vibe.
They didn't want to give some direct contact or some address or...
No.
I asked for a number. They said no.
So they said no, just admin.
Vali can't film inside Grace Road's headquarters or speak with officials, but he can at least visit the cult's restaurants.
I love the food that they have, the menu that they prepare.
The pizzas are good.
I mean, they have good taste, especially for the pizza. I love the pizza, so...
It's a great place to eat.
I like their food and coffee.
Okay, we're at Olive Tree, and I'm having some carbonara rice cakes. And I have to say, it's really, really good. We are at Patisserie Pacifica and Fierce Chicken, having a coffee. So the coffee is good, I can tell you that, and the rest I'll tell you a bit later.
So let's take a look. Great food, modern interior, no signs of an abusive doomsday cult. But wait, these signs read, the brightest, cleanest, kindest, and most honest eternal group that sees and delivers the eternal love of God. Interesting world map also. The center of the world, Fiji, the only island with yesterday and today. And look at these, the Booklet of Truth, by Reverend Okjo Shin. Vali takes one.
Justification of threshing. Reading about why Okjo Shin has to be released from prison. It feels like everyone knows about Grace Road. Everyone has a reaction whenever I mention the name. And I can't really tell what the reaction is like about their businesses, restaurants, shops. But whenever I ask a little bit more critical question, it feels that people tensen up. People don't want to comment, people don't know, or they've heard some rumors, but it really feels like they don't speak openly, or they can't speak openly, or they just want to focus on the positive aspects. And we have speculated that this might also be related to some kind of leftover fear of the previous government, which was essentially a dictatorship under Bainimarama.
In the Bainimarama era, things were quite different.
This is Fred Wesley, editor-in-chief of the newspaper Fiji Times. He was already in office when Grace Road set foot in Fiji. Back then, what looked like paradise was in fact a deeply oppressed country.
I say there's a lot of misunderstanding by the international community of what transpired here. And Australia and New Zealand, being big brothers, wanted to stamp their mark as big brothers. But why do you think they're doing it?
Because they don't like to see a military dictatorship in the region.
Frank Bainimarama came to power in a military coup. He was a former commodore of the Fijian Navy. He's a strong man. He is reputed to have inflicted a great many acts of violence on individuals who were critical of the regime.
A lot of people don't want to understand the situation here. Is it because I'm a military man?
Yes, of course, you've seized power. Okay, no, with a military man in a nice shirt, but you're still a military man and you still have...
I keep telling everyone, a radical change needs to be brought in. And radical change cannot be brought in by some weak organization.
Under Bainimarama, the opposition in parliament was, for all intents and purposes, muzzled. Freedoms of expression, peaceful assembly, and association were restricted. Violence was commonplace. The media was heavily censored and tightly controlled by the regime.
I had a senior journalist who was based in the West, who was arrested 5 times, thrown into a cell 3 times. I've had people who were journalists who were verbally abused by ministers, and an editor would get a $25,000 fine and be sentenced to jail for 2 years.
It wasn't only journalists that were suffering this kind of repression. The laws were changed, the constitution was changed, the arm of government was strengthened in terms of repressing negative or critical voices. It was a very, very strict regime for anybody who wasn't completely aligned with the Bainimarama agenda.
After seizing power in the 2006 coup, Bainimarama held on thanks to a system that mixed regular democratic elections with periods of repression. He survived 2 elections in 2014 and 2018, but in 2022, Fiji's economy is faltering. The pandemic battered tourism, and some sense a wind of change. Bainimarama lost his absolute majority, and a coalition of other parties took over parliament. Vali still senses the echo of these dark days of oppression, especially when he talks to people off camera. Much of it he puts down in his notes.
Jim and Lani often refer to the Bainimarama regime, 16 years of oppression. They tell the story of the relationship between Prime Minister Bainimarama and Grace Road. During his tenure, the Fiji Development Bank invested a significant amount of money in the group. On the other hand, he used Grace Road for his own purposes. From a Fijian perspective, the story of Grace Road is bigger than the cult itself. It's politically charged.
The OCCRP investigated these troubling ties between Bainimarama and Grace Road. A former government spokesman told them the cult was treated like a protected species. Laws restricting free speech also kept criticism of the cult largely muted. OCCRP revealed that Fijian police had spoken with witnesses who described beatings and other abuses by Grace Road members, but without any serious consequences for them.
And so I think the kind of strong-armed administration that we see in Grace Road would have resonated very much with Frank Bainimarama and Ayaz Sayed Qayyum, the 2 main members of the Fijian government at the time.
It's Vali's 5th day in Fiji, and it starts with a surprise. We've actually received an answer from Grace Road, but not the one we expected.
Okay. Here's a serious update. Yesterday, Lani got a call from the Film Commission in Fiji.
Wait. Okay, wait. Are you in the office? Okay, I'll come across to you now.
Okay, Lani just got a phone call from Film Fiji, who gave us the permit to film, that the lawyers of Grace Road called Film Fiji to revoke our permit. And right now, Lani is in the office.
So the lawyers have contacted them about the fact that we've been going to different Grace Road restaurants and shops and stuff. They're emailing them now about canceling, revoking the permit altogether, the filming permit altogether.
Losing the permit would mean that we'd have to stop filming. Lonnie explained to the commission that we didn't do anything illegal at Grace Road. But now she still has to deal with the lawyers.
So I'm going to start typing up emails now.
Okay.
Again.
Maybe they can actually get us in touch with Grace Road themselves.
Exactly.
Yeah. Maybe it's a good thing.
Yeah, let's hope this all comes to a, fruitful outcome for everybody.
Damn. This is getting intense. Everyone starts to be aware of us. Exciting.
The lawyers from Grace Road state that
our client is extremely concerned with the basis on which a permit was given to your production company. It is imperative that the permit given to your production company must be cancelled forthwith. However, we will leave that decision to Film Fiji. They also wrote that we need permission from Grace Road to film anything about them, and that they, quote, expressly declines your request to film or shoot any short film, documentary, or any other form of any motion picture on or about it. They're trying to shut us down. If that's not a red flag, I don't know what is.
Anyway, we get to keep our filming permit, but from Grace Road's perspective, it probably made sense to try to stop us from filming. After all, it would be a shame if more people learned about the horrendous crimes they allegedly committed. It's the summer of 2018, 4 years after Grace Road's arrival in Fiji. Their many businesses are thriving. Videmar Ama's regime is still in power. Shin is on a 15-hour trip back to South Korea. When she and other church leaders arrive at Incheon International Airport in Seoul, the group is suddenly surrounded by police officers. Shin Okjo and 3 of her companions are arrested on the spot.
By that time, there were fairly well-developed allegations of significant physical violence. The church goes through this process they call the threshing floor. And that means, they say that people's sins are expiated through beatings, effectively. It's really upsetting violence.
We've seen the footage of the threshing floor. We will not show it here, but it is truly gruesome.
That kind of activity had been going on for quite some time. Korean authorities were aware of it. They had credible allegations. They felt they had sufficient evidence.
And these violent practices are said to have made their way to Fiji.
It appears to be the method of maintaining discipline within the church membership itself. And that discipline is extremely strict by every account that we've come across.
That's what Mara Ma told us as well. She worked for Grace Road's farms and in their True Mark supermarkets.
They get in hurt but tell each other or go to the hospital.
We were not able to independently verify Mara Ma's statements. However, her account aligns with numerous other reports from former workers, including those of this young woman, whom Vali happened to meet by chance on the roadside.
If they did something wrong, they'll be getting I heard that they'll get the high role from the leaders. And when the time ask them, they'll just say that I fell.
We were not able to independently verify her statements either, but she claims that she worked at Grace Farms for 2 months as a holiday job. Despite the harsh conditions for all employees, one thing stands out. Grace Road seems to operate like a 2-tier society. On one side are the local Fijians, who have had some bad experiences, and on the other the Koreans, who have suffered far worse.
Fijian workers, by all accounts, were treated well, but at the end of the day, they went home. The mostly Korean church members did not. They were kept in barracks. There have been a number of allegations. They extend to separation of family members forcefully, the unwilling detention of people, taking their passports effectively and refusing them the ability to travel, that is, to leave the church. There have been allegations of being fed improperly, being housed improperly, being overworked, well beyond what normal labor practices would allow, physical punishments to top everything off.
Much of this was allegedly also experienced in 2014 by then 21-year-old Seoeun Lee. After undergoing cancer surgery, her mother joined Grace Road and wanted to travel to Fiji for recovery. Seoeun interrupted her studies and accompanied her for 2 weeks. Shin's sermons were bizarre.
A lot of wailing, a lot of shouting. She would verbally abuse a lot of people, call them names, awful names.
When she tried to leave, she realized something was wrong.
Actually started packing the day before. And when I went to, pack my computer, my laptop, it was gone. I realized my passport was gone. I was panicking a lot. I was screaming for help.
Dressed only in pajamas and flip-flops, she made her escape. Although others tried to block her path, she managed to break free and ran straight towards a police car. They helped her obtain an emergency passport at the South Korean embassy. All the while, Grace Road members pursued her, and even her own mother tried to convince her to stay. But she left her mother behind in Fiji and managed to return to South Korea. Grace Road seems to rule over its members with an iron fist. The cult runs an enormous business empire and has excellent ties to the country's dictator, so they may have wondered, why not bring the promised land under its control entirely?
반드시 정계에 들어갈 겁니다. 정으로 돼 있어도 그들은 이게 안 저가니까 안 돌아가니까. 그러면서 어떻게 할까 하고 우리가 지배하고 다스리고 누리고 정복할 거야.
While Shin settles into her prison cell, South Korean authorities are continuing their crackdown on Grace Road. Shortly after capturing Shin in Seoul, they plan to strike again. 17 officers are sent on a secret mission to Fiji. On the ground, they meet with the local police, and in the middle of the night, a joint operation begins.
They arrived at the main multi-acre farm, that's the headquarters of the church. Late at night, did a sort of a sweep to gather up people and evidence before anybody had a chance to react.
In the following days, 6 South Korean citizens get arrested, including Shin's son, Daniel Kim. The secret mission is looking like a huge success. But then,
well, nobody really knows exactly what happened. What we do know is that the courts intervened quite quickly. Shortly after that intervention, the Fijian police were saying, okay, look, we're going to take over this investigation. And so the Korean police detachment, who thought that they were going to come back with, a number of people in their custody, ended up going back empty-handed. An Interpol red notice was issued at around that time for Daniel Kim and presumably for others.
But in Fiji, it seems like no one cares. Perhaps investigations continue behind the scenes, but for years, nothing comes of them. So Daniel Kim gets to carry on with business as usual. Grace Road launches new ventures and keeps on growing.
They expanded from 30-something businesses to 54 in the period following the raids. Grace Road became one of the largest private employers in Fiji at the time.
And they keep diversifying. From dental clinics to gas stations, the stations are reportedly run in partnership with ExxonMobil. They are still operating today. We asked ExxonMobil whether they were aware of the events surrounding Grace Road, and why, instead of ending the cooperation, they chose to expand it. They did not respond. In July 2019, Shin Ok-jo was convicted in South Korea. She was sentenced to 6 years in prison for fraud, holding her followers captive in Fiji and subjecting them to violence.
Daniel Kim became the effective leader of the church. He's got, the money of his contributors, of his church members. He's also got access to a great deal of leverage in terms of development loans and various other things.
But not everyone in Fiji stays silent about Grace Road. At the end of 2019, opposition leader Siddharth Rabuka demands an immediate investigation. Now that Korean courts have convicted the founder of Grace Road for offenses committed in Fiji, our authorities cannot turn a blind eye to the allegation of forced labor, torture, assault, and illegal detention, and they must act swiftly to protect the human rights of the members of Grace Road and prosecute those who have broken our laws. Despite all the allegations and calls for investigation, Videmar reportedly continues to let the cult operate undisturbed for years. But by 2022, his grip on power is slipping. After 16 years of oppressive rule, Videmar is finally voted out. Siddharth Rabuka becomes prime minister. All signs point to trouble for Grace Road. 2023, September 7th. The newly elected Fijian government is cracking down on the cult. 6 members of the cult are declared prohibited immigrants after the South Korean government nullified their passports. 2 members get deported. 2 more are released after a court injunction. The last 2, including Daniel Kim, are said to be on the run. But then, this appears on Facebook.
We are not human. Everyone we know who knows about. Do we look like a cult? If the cult, why are so many of the customers supporting us? So, I want to deliver this message to the people that this is not a legal thing. This is illegally, and we are not happy about it. How did you do that?
But it's no use. Daniel Kim is put on immigration custody. For years, Grace Road stayed silent in the face of criticism, but now they launch a massive solidarity campaign. The cult is facing existential risks. Its leader was convicted in South Korea. Her son, the new head, is detained, and the new government has launched extensive investigations. For now, their business keeps running, from agriculture and construction to restaurants, supermarkets, and gas stations. The question is, how long will it last? A concern that, it seems, has begun to trouble the Fijian government as well. Grace Road claims in a statement that it creates jobs for rural development and employs over 800 local workers, making it one of the country's biggest employers.
Well, look, let's be realistic. Grace Road is a significant economic driver. Tourism has not rebounded to the levels that existed pre-COVID. Grace Road is an alternative employer to the tourism industry. And so if you pull the plug, summarily on 54 companies operating across swath of the country's main island, that could have some pretty serious repercussion.
Jump forward to December 2024, 400 days after Kim's detention, half a year before Vali will travel to Fiji. Countless Grace Road members and employees have gathered in front of the appeals court in the capital, Suva. This is the moment they have all been waiting for. Daniel Kim and another Grace Road official step out. He is free.
This was the normal operation of the courts. They have allowed him his liberty while this judicial review is in process.
The de facto leader of Grace Road is out on bail. No one back in Fiji has been prosecuted for their alleged practices behind closed doors.
I know there are a great many people who feel that there should be prosecutions. That is not a view that's shared by the public prosecutor in Fiji at this time.
Even the US government criticizes Fiji in its newly released report on human trafficking. The report notes that no one from Grace Road has ever been prosecuted or convicted. A clear shift has taken place within the Fijian government, from the unmistakable demands of the past to a far more cautious approach. The government publicly states that it's disappointed that Grace Road is now reconsidering new investments in Fiji. They stress that they have always treated Grace Road with friendliness, and they say they respect them for their new retail standards they brought to Fiji.
Currently, there is a great deal of concern about, what happens if you effectively kill this golden goose, if you remove one of the substantial private sector drivers in the Fijian economy at this time.
Now, on the ground, Vali wants to ask government representatives about these concerns, and we want to know why the investigations into Grace Road keep dragging on. According to the OCCRP, Fijian officers have spoken to key witnesses of beatings and other abuses more than 5 years ago. What's taking so long? Interviews had been arranged, but a series of unfortunate circumstances got in the way. For example, key members of the government were stuck on another island, 6 to 8 hours away.
Now, most of the government officials actually, this week, they have a super intense week, right?
Luckily, Lani has already received commitments from individual ministers and is now trying to arrange new appointments. But
now, more than 2 weeks later, this is her message. I spent Monday morning at Kamikamita and Naupoto's office trying to lock interview times. Both these ministers have been advised not to make any public comments regarding Grace Road since both offices have active interests and files before them. Any public comments have a high chance of putting both them and their ministry in a precarious position.
We sent them written questions but never received a reply. We also reached out to the Grace Road group, but unsurprisingly, got no response either.
Lani talked about the colonial history of Fiji, how the UK thought they could conquer it but couldn't, and instead had to integrate. She has a similar hope with Grace Road, that outsiders coming to Fiji with bad intentions might somehow be changed for the better.
Right, you're saying, oh, well, that's okay. Over there, we'll still go and buy their pizzas because their pizzas are good. That kind of thinking. Oh, well, no, that's the chicken, that's not the church, that's not... No, it's all connected. Our comfort and our convenience is more important than our values and our ethics. And I think that's where we start to fail as people and as Christians.
And you see, I came here to understand what is Grace Road really about. And to be honest, finding answers to these questions has been really, really tough. There's so much secrecy. People seem to be afraid of something whenever talking about Grace Road.
I think one of the things that we need to remember is that Fijians have been living under a more or less oppressive regime with significant curtailment of their human rights since 2006. Democratic government, as we understand it, is a fairly novel concept.
Our latest investigation story or piece is with our lawyers. We've had Grace Road lawyers send us a notice to holding back the story. But yes, we do have an investigation piece that we hope to run over a couple of weeks, an in-depth investigation where we have spoken to victims, we have spoken to people who worked once for Grace Road and who have left.
As of the release of this video, the Fiji Times have not published their investigation.
So while many of my questions are still unanswered, there's at least one thing I can say for sure, and that's the people. I mean, the people of Fiji, they will always stay in my heart. They're the nicest, most generous, humorous people, always up for a smile, even though it's not super easy to live here. I mean, many Fijians struggle to make a living, to make ends meet, and it's also not a huge country. And that's exactly why outsiders coming in here as guests, as businesses, as churches, they must act with real care, with responsibility, transparency. And of course, I mean, Grace Road has brought a lot of good things.
Without a doubt, they have a business model that's unique. And without a doubt, they've actually stimulated economic development, economic growth in areas that didn't have this. They've employed people. You know, that's a reality. But there's also a lot of negatives.
When so much good is wrapped in so much secrecy, when there is a taboo to speak about it at all, that's really a red flag to me. And that tells me something has to be changed.
What better place than this to read you a little bit from Reverend Okchushin's brochure. This brochure is written by Okchushin from prison and given out publicly in Grace Road shops. And I'll read some more of this to you. Threshing. An assault, moving to Fiji, a confinement. The threshing floor is the spiritual warfare for the salvation of souls. The Spirit of Truth, Reverend Okchushin, carried out the threshing floor to protect the children of God from the plagues.
To us, this does not sound like remorse. To us, this sounds like a justification for brutal violence. Meanwhile, Grace Road seems to be looking to expand their empire beyond Fiji.
The president of Nauru, which is a tiny island nation of about 20,000 people, has extended an invitation to Daniel Kim, asking him to come and work his economic magic on his tiny island to see, what he can do to help the economy of Nauru.
Nauru's climate is warm, with no winter. Fertile soil is limited, though. But who is to say if any of this is really in preparation for some imaginary apocalypse, or just about money and power?